Gentlemen, today we're going to be talking about the king of the hats, the top hat, here on Big Pretty Man. Hi, welcome back to Big Pretty Man, a channel for the extra large man who wants to live his life large and in charge. I'm your host, Timothy Big Pretty Crowe. I'm a wardrobe and lifestyle consultant for the extra large man. And yes, folks, the day has come. I think we all knew it was coming eventually. I'm doing a top hat review. Talking about the top hat. It's a hat I've always thought that I'd never end up owning because it's not a very practical hat. It's not something you can wear every day. I mean, how many times am I going to wear a top hat? Maybe twice in life. Didn't hardly seem worth the purchase. However, for everyone out there that follows me regularly, you know that my wedding is coming up in less than a month. And I decided to wear morning wear, and of course, when you wear morning wear, you got to get the top hat. So here I am with the top hat. And as I've talked about before, if you've seen some of my videos on the Homburg, the bowler, the boater, I've talked about a hierarchy of hats. And of course, like when I wear the Homburg I call the boss of hats, and it is the second in the hierarchy of fashion hats. But the top, the king, the big boy, the big time, is of course the top hat. The top hat has become a symbol of not only the height of sophistication and the height of male style and formal style, but also a symbol of either popularity, position, or wealth. And it's a very interesting history and a little bit of a mystery to that history as to where the top hat came from. There is actually a legend that a man named John Hetherington in England invented the top hat, and the first time he wore it, he got arrested for causing a bit of a disturbance, making women faint because it was so odd and different. Well, that seems to be just a legend, because the time period that it's said that he invented this hat, we know that hat was already in existence. So where exactly does the top hat come from? Well, from what we can tell, it's speculated that it came out of the Capitan hat. Now, Capitan hat was a tall hat with a shorter brim, and usually it comes to a little more closer to a cone at the top rather than flat on top. And it actually started off as kind of a country hat, used more by people that lived in a more rural area. It become a kind of a country style. However, that did bleed over into higher society, more common society and higher society, and the hat was worn pretty commonly. Before that, the more formal, regular hats they wore was what people call the tricone, which was actually known as a cock hat. That's the Revolution hat most people think of in America, or the pirate hat. However, it seems like that after the British Civil War with the Puritans, and also that the Capitan hat, which is also usually associated with pilgrims here in America and the Puritans, it seems that the puritanical movement after the English Civil War and the time of the Parliamentary Republic, changing up the more formal, the more aristocratic looking dress started to fall out of fashion, become much more practical, much more everyday. And really, one of the big causes of the change in fashion was with the fallout of the justaucorps. The justaucorps was this long, very fancy coat that was worn that went well down closer to the knees. It was this long gown-like coat. However, because it was associated with the aristocrats, it started to fall out of favor, and frock coats and dress coats that's when they then come into style. That seemed to be a more everyday man's dress, but of course it became more formal wear. And at the same time, the tricone hat, or what they call the cock hat, was also going out of style around about the 1770s to 1790s. And in the 1790s, we see the introduction of the top hat. Who invented it? No one really knows. But it did show up, and it seems to have been an adjustment to the old Capitan hat, the old pilgrim hat. And by the way, the pilgrim hat, the Puritan hat, never had the buckle on the front. That's myth. So that seems to be where the top hat came from. Now, most people will kind of replace the Tarkin hat, the cock hat, with the top hat, and so it was at first worn by the everyday common man, the working man. In fact, even cops were shown to wear them. And they were more stiff so that they could stand up on them to look over walls and into windows and things. It was a much more common hat. However, after World War II in the 1920s, real formal wear was coming into its own. The real black tie, and even the white tie was really coming into its own as high formal wear for high formal parties. Think of Great Gatsby. And at that point, the top hat was the hat to go with either white tie or black tie, and thus become the height of formal fashion. It was the must-have for men's etiquette and formal etiquette and formal wear. So now, and even today, the top hat is still a symbol of popularity, position, and wealth. If you think about it, the Monopoly man, he wears the top hat. Why? Because he's a rich guy. Same thing like with Scrooge McDuck. He wore a top hat. And so the top hat, and even Ebenezer Scrooge himself, usually is shown in most movies and portrayals wearing a very tall top hat. Now, one variant that came up, which most people are familiar with, is what's known as the opera top hat. And that one was a collapsible hat, I think we've all seen, which you could snap it out with that wonderful sound. That was actually come up for men that went to the opera, because at the opera, it was easier to collapse it to put it under your chair. So those became popular. Now, most top hats are made out of either satin or felt or wool. At one time, beaver was extremely popular. But and now they come in all those different variations. Now, the top hat, of course, has had a lot of famous wearers. Probably one of the, from everything from presidents to prime ministers, like I said, with entertainment. Fred Astaire, of course, made it very famous in his dance routines, and he made a movie called Top Hat. But it started, even in the mid 19th century, going on up toward the 20th century. Other hats, such as the bowler, which came out really as a replacement for the top hat, as a more utilitarian hat, and then of course the fedora and the and the flat caps, those started coming out, and the everyday wear of the top hat really fell pretty much into abeyance, and only became worn as a formal hat. And today, it's very rare to see someone just walking down the street in a top hat. There are some exceptions. Of course, it got popular with some of the hipsters were wearing the top hats. We do see it like with rock stars such as Slash. We also see it especially with steampunk. You see a lot of the top hats with steampunk, which kind of matches what they're trying to do, the era and the progression that it's trying to portray. But other than that, the top hat is pretty much isolated to extreme formal wear. You would wear this type of hat only to make a large state function, to the opera, or, which has become the most common, and the reason I got it, for a wedding. So, that's really kind of the history of the top hat. Now, as I said, the top hat is not a hat for everyday wear. You ain't going to wear this to go to the grocery store. A top hat. I'm all for pushing some of the boundaries and wearing what you want to wear and making your own expression. But wearing a top hat as just an ordinary day hat, that would really go too far past the line. In fact, way past the line. It's just not a hat made for that type of wear. And in our culture today, it would be seen as extremely eccentric. Not just bold, but eccentric. Unless you're really into steampunk and you're wearing that type of variation, and you're in that type of garb, that type of outfit, really you're not going to wear a top hat. The top hat is strictly for formal wear and high formal wear. For instance, you can a Homburg can be used with the fanciest of suits, even be used with a black tie. You could get away with the Homburg there. However, when it comes to morning wear, when it comes to white tie, and really even with black tie, it is more ideal. It is expected that if you're going to wear a hat, you wear the top hat. You can get away with the tux, just to wear a Homburg, but really those upper categories, those upper echelons of men's fashion dress, the highest you can go, require only one hat, and that's the top hat. And that's really the only time you can really wear it, and be socially acceptable, and even expected. Now, as far as the extra large man, I will say it's a little bit of a shame we can't wear them, and I wouldn't wear it. It's kind of I'm sorry, it would look ridiculous walking around in, but it's kind of too bad because as far as a bigger man, it's a great hat. Once again, tall crown hats look good on big men. If you remember, you go back and watch my video about the boater. I was hesitant about the boater because of that straight brim, but it's tall. That smokestack crown, frame the face because it's long. It goes down the face and gives your face a more elongated shape. Well, that's the same with the top hat. Even more, this ridiculously tall crown, and I'm wearing a medium one. You get a smoke top one, I don't think it fit the frame. But it does. You can see my face runs because this is straight. My face runs. It gives it the illusion, really, of being elongated. So it takes around the roundness of the face, which is always a good thing. As you can see, I can take it off automatically, and all of a sudden, your face looks bigger, looks rounder. But I've lost a lot of weight in my face. Wow. But either way, it does let me wonder if I just put it on automatically. There you go. It's my face looks much more elongated, and that's a good thing. And that's always a good rule with hats. Taller crowns make your face look more elongated, and that's always a good thing when you got a big pumpkin sitting on your neck. So it's in a way kind of too bad that it's not a common day hat, but like I said, in truth, I would never wear this thing just walk around the streets. I'd look really weird. I'm not Slash, so I'm or Scrooge McDuck, so I'm not going to get away with it. So, do I recommend you get a top hat? Well, it really matters on your lifestyle. If you're ever going to be in a situation where you're going to have to wear very, very high formal wear, like I said, a state function, some sort of going to the opera, or possibly your own wedding. Yeah, I think you should wear one if you're a guest to the wedding. That should be more in the purview of the groom. But if you are getting married and you want to wear formal wear, then yes, you need a top hat. Now you can go with the typical black, or actually there's sort of a rule. It's supposed to be if it's during the day, it should be a gray one, or in the evening it should be black. But really, I don't think that rule much applies anymore. I think if you're because it's so rare that one would wear morning wear or white tie or even black tie. I don't think it would make that big a difference of the time now. So, but it would probably help to have two. If you're going to get one for formal events, get one in black and get one in gray. That way you're covered. But this is, like I said, this is going to be a hat that would be rarely taken out of the box. So if you're not someone who's ever going to be like invited to an inauguration, or or possibly to an event with King Charles III, or if you're a member of the board for the opera and you go there commonly, you probably don't need a top hat. But if you plan to get married and you want to dress it up, get the top hat. That would be the one condition. Well, that's all I have on the top hat, the king of the hats. the highest in the hierarchy of headwear. Now, of course, like I said, would I wear this every day? No. But if it's a formal event, let me tell you something. You don't get much more elegant and showing high status and showing just pure suave coolness than the top hat. So if you're ever in one of those situations, it's definitely worth the investment. But whatever hat you wear, whatever you put on your head, just remember, always dress sharp, always look your best, and you know what? Be like me in this top hat. Stay pretty.